Okay, UFC 322, Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della Maddalena. Actually, you know what? No, JDM versus Islam, brother. Islam is coming up. JDM is the king of the hood, and Islam is pulling up on some snowfall stuff. Currently, right now, the odds are okay. God, on Sportsbet, damn, on Sportsbet in Australia, it's $1 for Islam, $3 for JDM. For all the non-Aussies, I'll just say that that is insane. Basically, this is the Aussie version of like minus 400 favorite, plus 400 underdog for like JDM or something. I don't know. Wait, the odds on the UFC page, yeah, Islam is a minus 200 favorite. JDM is a plus 200 underdog. So look, which, if we're being honest, is fair. Islam is that guy, and looking at JDM's resume, you'd see why everyone would assume Islam will win, but I actually think you should bet on the underdog here. Let me explain why I think JDM can get this one done. Now, just two words, actually, well, a name: Craig Jones. I'm sure you know who the man is. He's the man that trained Volk to dodge Islam's submissions. He's the man who got JDM the title through stuffing Bilal's takedowns, as he is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners out there at the moment. I genuinely do believe that if Craig Jones takes it extremely seriously, he'll be the cure for the Dagestani style in MMA. Currently, his record for coaching fighters using that style is 1-2, but one of those losses don't really count because Volk was knocked out, and the other was an extremely close fight between Makhachev and Volk, with many people believing that Volk did the best. I mean, look. This isn't even a thing. Like, obviously, there's all this discussion about if Volk won or if Makhachev won. But the fact is that Volk did the best against Makhachev's ground game that anyone has done in a while, except for maybe Sarukian. I mean, even Oliveira couldn't dodge the submission. But to be fair, I don't know if it's possible to submit Volk in MMA. He's an actual beast when it comes to that stuff. And yeah, he doesn't really have a neck. But as much as I glaze Volk and believe in many ways he did win that fight, because I do go back and forth on that fight, many times I believe Islam did get that one done, but I do believe that Volk did also at points. Like, I would not say that Volk technically, it felt like a tie to me. But look, ultimately, I could see agreements for both. I can see arguments for both. Ultimately, I understand that he left it too close, though, where I can see JDM closing that gap a bit. Now, that isn't to say JDM is better than Volk, because I don't think he is. However, I think stylistically, JDM is an even harder matchup for Islam. Here's the reasoning. Now, number one, and the most obvious reasoning is that JDM is a much bigger opponent than Islam has ever faced, especially in comparison to Volk. Now, again, I love Volk, but Volk was a featherweight moving up against a guy who was known for being really, really heavy for lightweight. So by no means do I think Islam will be undersized. I mean, just look at his physique. Bro, Islam is huge. At least in this clip, he looks huge. Other clips I've seen just make him out to be just a little bit more filled out. So I don't think there is that big of a size difference, at least from what we've seen in the weigh-ins. However, Islam no longer has the size factor that the Dagestani fighters have used at lightweight. Being obviously a little oversized, to put into perspective, Dustin Poirier walks around 170 pounds, whilst Islam walks around 185 to 190, with both cutting down to 155. Now that's a pretty big difference, but a guy going from 185 to 170 is much more reasonable. I mean, imagine if Volk and Islam didn't have that weight discrepancy. I think it wouldn't be an insane change, but I do think that it would have made things easier for Volk in the clinch and wrestling, which is Islam's strong suit to winning fights. Now, in other reasons, I do think we need to talk about JDM's mix of the martial arts, because we know JDM is an elite boxer. It's no secret he's easily got the best hands out of anyone Islam has ever fought, but that's not what I want to talk about, because JDM's ground game is also elite, specifically his defense. So first things first, before he even gets to the ground, his takedown defense is pretty elite. I'll try and find some photos or clips, but usually typically a high and tight guard is a major disadvantage against wrestlers. I mean, we saw it with DDP Shemaev. DDP had a major disadvantage with the high guard because it made his reactions slower when dropping his hands to stuff Hamzat's takedowns. And he didn't stuff a like I think he stuffed one or two takedowns max. He was taken down repeatedly over throughout the fight. Now JDM does have that same guard, however he uses it really smartly, tucking his high guard into the rest of his body, knocking head to head with the opponent as he nudges them away. So I'll try to find a clip again to show you what that looks like. But he's used it a couple times. I think he used it on Bilal, and it was great. It was amazing. And he's got a few other tricks in there to stuff takedowns. But that's not really the main important thing I want to speak about. The main important thing I want to speak about is once he gets on the ground. Because it's no secret JDM can be taken down. He did a really good job not being taken down in the Bilal fight. Obviously, before that, the Gilbert Burns fight, he was taken down repeatedly. Many people have said that he got taken down because so much and so frequently because he had broken his arm by that point. But even he said in the fight that he didn't even notice that he had broken his arm until a little bit after. Sorry, I just knocked the mic. But I don't really know how much you have to put into that. I do think that JDM will be taken down here. But the great thing is that his focus on once he is taken down, his scrambles. He scrambles, does kicks off at the sides. Even in the Gilbert Burns fight, when he dealt with major adversity in round 3, he was still exploding out. And I think that's a major thing that you need to beat Islam Makhachev. JDM always continues to be explosive throughout the entire fight, never staying on the canvas under control time for too long. And I think that, yeah, that's a major thing that he needs to beat Islam with because Islam's not Bilal. Islam's better than Bilal, mainly in the hands, but his wrestling is better too. We saw Volk lose rounds because of Islam's control time on the ground, even when he was landing more strikes in that position. So in order to beat Islam, you need to be able to get out and you can't be stagnant like Volk and Dustin Poirier were. And I think that's what JDM is going to bring to this matchup. And look, I fully believe that Craig Jones saw what worked and what didn't in that first Volk fight with Jack. And they're going to come in with that as a base, with what worked and what didn't in the Bilal fight as well, using that to put an even better performance on in the ground game. And I think that's the number one thing that JDM is going to need for this fight is that explosiveness. And I think that's what it's going to really help him. Now, just a few other things that I want to point out and other things to mention. Once again, as I said before, I do believe Islam is a very well-rounded fighter in just straight up mixed martial arts. He's not a wrestler, he's a mixed martial arts fighter. And typically the way he wins rounds is, look, I'm just going to give you the ideal Islam Makhachev round. Strike with the opponent, land a similar amount to them to where it can be pointed fairly similarly, and then shoot, get the takedown, hold them, and then try and work off a submission or ground and pound. Boom. Enough points to easily secure the round. That's it. That's all he needs. Because when you typically see an ideal Islam Makhachev round, he strikes well enough to where the striking's so close that the judges kind of need to go, okay, the striking close enough to where we now need to factor in control time. So even if he doesn't get a submission off, and even if he barely throws any ground and pound at all, the control time always factors in because the striking is so similar. This is very true in the Volk fights. It was very true within with his fight with Dustin Poirier, even though that didn't go to the judges. And I think that's one thing that JDM's also going to be able to do much better than those other two guys were, and whoever other Islam Makhachev opponents were. But look, here's the thing. JDM, not only does he have to either stuff the takedown or get up quickly when taken down, but he needs to really show a significant gap in that striking. Which not only do I think he does with his insane combinations, because he's able to, he's able to throw off combos with shots to the body, which could pay nice over the course of the five. And then constantly when JDM is going in, he's able to land 3 or 4 shots off. He did it so well in so many combinations against Bilal, against Kevin Holland too. I'm thinking of them in my head. You'll see them up on the screen. But these work really, really nicely, and it helps bridge that gap in the striking so that control time won't end up factoring in. So I think that's very important for JDM to do. But also, if you notice, once again talking about that high and tight guard, which typically people against typically ends up causing takedowns. I do think it is a pretty strong suit here, though, for JDM's striking. Because look, he won the Kevin Holland fight through throwing less strikes than Kevin, but he landed a majority, whereas Kevin threw significantly more and landed less because of that high guard. JDM is virtually unhittable with that high guard in most areas. Even when like when throwing body shots, he's able to duck like he does against wrestlers, and it works really well for his style. So if he can do that and significantly show that effort throughout the striking, and then obviously get to his feet when he does get taken down, because I do think he will be taken down, I think it's going to pay off nicely, and I think it's going to pay off real well within winning fights. I mean, winning rounds against Islam. Now, I think even with all that, though, it's so much easier said than done against Islam because of how professional he is, how many times he's been through it, and I think that with the lack of experience that JDM does have, whereas, Islam, he's obviously been in the game for a longer. He's had a lot more wins. He's done a lot more, especially in these like 5 rounds and whatnot. I do think Islam obviously has the upper hand here. If it goes to the distance and it goes to a decision, I can 100% see Islam winning this. I'll give him like a 60% chance, with JDM having like a 40% chance. But the one final thing I'll say is that, look, JDM has one thing that Volk didn't necessarily have in the Islam fight: the finishing potential. We saw when Volk dropped Islam. If that's JDM instead, I could honestly see a finish. Now, once again, I think Volk is a better mixed martial artist, but stylistically, JDM is a better matchup. He's able to constantly, I mean, we saw the Gilbert Burns fight. He was losing on rounds to Gilbert Burns, which makes me nervous, because if he's losing on rounds to Gilbert Burns, he can definitely lose rounds to Islam Makhachev. But, dude, that one combination, that one knee, that one combination after getting up from that takedown from Gilbert and knocking him out with that kick, with that knee. Obviously, Islam has seen that. He knows that that damage is there. He knows that that JDM has the ability to finish. But when it's all said and done, and when he gets punched in the face, he might not be able to stop that. So JDM, even if he does lose rounds, he can still always get that finish. So look, we're only a couple days away now. In fact, we're only like a day away, so I'm gonna make sure to post this real quick. Let me know what you guys think. For the odds, I say JDM is a great bet. I can't say he'll win for sure. It's very 50-50 to me. If he does get out of the first couple rounds, and we do see him either stuff takedowns or get out of takedowns early, or avoid submission attempts, I think that'll be a very clear sign for JDM to win. If he doesn't, if he's not able to do that, I think Islam could honestly probably get this one done. But considering his betting odds, I think he's a major underdog, but I think he will pay well if you do bet for him. And look, JDM's got to be on for the entire 25 minutes. But if he is, I do think a win is possible. Yeah, once again, let me know what you guys think. Like and subscribe.